Welcome to Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez. He's our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and it's just us today.
Hello, John. Just you and me. All right, let's do this.
Talking a little basketball. Later in the show, we'll preview tonight's massive Game 6 between the Knicks and the Pacers, and we'll discuss which of the remaining playoff teams is most desperate to win a title this season. But first, what a blowout last night between the Nuggets and the Wolves. Wolves hammered the Nuggets 115-70. Beat them by 45 points, Bill. It's the biggest winning margin in the postseason since 2015. And it's the second biggest margin ever by a team facing elimination. They tie up the series 3-3. I don't even know what to say about this. I'm shocked. Nuggets started 9-2 in the first quarter. Joker made a little joke about that afterwards, and then they just got steamrolled.
You know what? To not know what to make of it is the exact right take. I did HQ last night, and for the first time ever, I just refused to do a prediction. And I think they asked me 3 times. And I just said, I don't know what's going to happen in Game 7. I'm completely – it's a confounding series. It's a weird series.
Super.
I guess all the above. What an incredible performance by the Timberwolves. What a gutsy way to respond with your back to the wall. What an absolute abdication of any sort of, even approximation of effort or competitiveness from the defending champions. And you know this. Anything can happen in the Game 7. I'm sure we'll all talk about Denver as the favorites, the betting favorites. Probably everybody will take them. But it's been a fun but bizarro series, and I have no idea. I'm just done pretending I have any idea what's going to happen in Denver, Minnesota. I don't know.
Zero idea what's going to happen. Of all the things that I thought might happen in that game, that was not one of them. The first 4 games, nobody could win on their home floor. The last 2 games, they both won on their home floor. We had, the classic Joker game, and then last night they just come apart at the seams. They didn't look like themselves at all, and didn't answer the Wolves' intensity at all. Ant went for 27, 4 and 3 steals. He looked really good, and that's a nice bounce back for him after a really rough Game 5 where he didn't have. I think he really missed Mike Conley in the lineup, and then they get Mike Conley back last night, and it really opened.
Conley was good.
Yeah, Conley was good, and it really takes a lot of pressure off of him. Did you see Ant saying that he had predicted that they would force the Game 7?
Did you see his response? Oh, it's amazing.
Well, we have the tape. Let's play the tape.
Did you really tell the locker room staffer in Denver you were going to be back for
Hell yeah. They know I was in there. Yeah, I told them. I said, I'll see y'all motherfuckers for Game 7. Yeah.
I'm just going to defend a bunch of people myself. You can't criticize us or ask us not to compare you to Jordan and then go out there and do stuff like that. That is so Jordan-esque. It wasn't the social media era, but the swagger, the confidence, the humor, the play. I don't care. I don't care what Ant said. He reminds me of Jordan. It's amazing.
I think
it's
he's
uncanny.
Infinitely more charismatic. I
think Jordan was pretty charismatic.
He had his moments. Yeah, he had his moments, but he also had plenty of moments where he'd obfuscate or demur or be the whole Republicans buy shoes too bit, we're
but that's not charisma. That's just a guy. It's a different conversation, but that's not charisma. That's a guy making a calculated decision to appeal to everybody. Charisma, just the idea of just being a winning, because Jordan didn't come up in the social media era either. I would disagree. I think Jordan was crazy charismatic. Crazy charismatic. Still is.
So Ant, great game from him. Predicted that they'd be having Game 7. Not a great showing from the Nuggets. That goes without saying. Joker was fine, but he was 0 for 4 from 3. And then Jamal Murray. Can we have a Jamal Murray discussion, please? Because he goes for 10 on 18 shots. He was horrendous offensively. Bill, that might have been the worst defensive effort I've seen from him maybe ever. And I'm not being hyperbolic. He was really bad and looked like he was checked out completely.
And let's get into the nitty gritty of whether it's real or excuse making. I don't know which it is, but I want to put it in context. He said after the game that it was his elbow, and he was asked whether Anthony Edwards did a good job on him defensively, whether Ant was the reason. And he was respectful to Edwards, but he said, no, man, that dude was great offensively, but it's my elbow. And he did. You saw, I think it was the second or third defensive possession. He banged it, I think, against Gobert. And normally maybe John give him the benefit of the doubt and say, all right, lack of defensive effort, horrible shooting night, but everybody's banged up. And Jalen Brunson on the other side is playing on 1.5 leg, 1.5 ankles, and he's been extraordinary. So are you willing to cede to Jamal Murray that, okay, he's injured and that's what's going on? Because I'm kind of not fair or not fair. I kind of, at this point of the season, don't care.
I know that he's been banged up, right? I mean, but this entire postseason, there's been a couple moments. Obviously, he had 2 big shots in the first series, and he had in this series, out of 6 games, 2 good games. But that leaves a whole lot of games where he didn't have good moments, or a whole lot of series that he didn't have good moments and didn't have good games. I mean, like, I have sung his praises repeatedly. I think he's been, before this year, a fantastic postseason performer. And this year, again, absent those 2 big shots in the first round, like, not himself. And if that's injury, then whatever. But yeah, I mean, like, when we look back, if they don't get out of this round, people aren't going to look back and go, oh, well, Jamal Murray was injured, so that's okay. They're going to look back and go, they didn't get out of this round. He didn't play well.
Push back on this if you don't agree, but I was watching the game last night. I was thinking it's more complicated than this, but I think Jamal Murray is much more important to his team than whoever you want to point. There is no guy that has to play as the second best player on the Timberwolves for me to say that team's got to win. Somebody's got to step up. Or last night, like Naj Reid he didn't jump off the box score, but he hit some big shots. You mentioned Conley coming back. It's interesting in the sense that Ant needs some help, but doesn't need that guy's help in particular. He just
one guy. Yeah.
They won a game without Gobert in the postseason, right? For when his kid was born.
Yeah.
This is not a slight at Joker. He's amazing. That team needs Jamal Murray. And that, to your point, and to the history of Denver when he's been hurt or played well or rare moments this postseason when he hasn't, if Jamal Murray is either not there or not there in terms of the level he has to be, Denver's not the same basketball team. They're not. They need him.
Yeah, they definitely do. He was absent last night. And then I'm glad you brought up Naz. I thought all 3 bigs were good last night without, as you mentioned, jumping off the box score, right? I mean, the 3 of them together dominated the boards. They dominated the points in the paint. I thought the defensive effort was really good on the whole from the Wolves. They had 19 points off of 12 turnovers. They held the Nuggets to 30% shooting. I mean, they were
they were great.
The Nuggets had a bad night shooting, but also the Wolves just, not to say that they solved the Nuggets, because they haven't. We've seen the Nuggets make adjustment after adjustment, but I thought that they did a really good job doubling Joker early and taking away that 2-man game and making it, okay, Jamal Murray, like, we're going to really try our best to front Joker and take him away. And like, we're going to ask Jamal Murray to step up, and he didn't. MPJ didn't step up. I mean, yeah, they don't really have, normally it would be Jamal, but it hasn't been. So now what do you do?
And MPJ has not been reliable ever in there. No. You know what? Look, the adjustments matter, but that game and what's going to happen, whatever happens in Game 7, reminds me. I don't know if you saw Rick Carlisle's pissed off response to a very legitimate "what adjustments do you have to make?" question. His answer was, "We got to bleep and play harder. They played harder. They played stronger. They wanted it more." We're sort of at a point where, look, elimination, winning, even for defending champions, elimination games, closeout games are hard, because you're playing a team that is desperate not to lose. And when you throw in the fact that I think the Timberwolves are outstanding, I think we'll look back and both these teams we'll see as, 2-3 years, continuous contenders in the West, throwing the best defense in the NBA, throwing Rudy Gobert, maybe reading the unfair critiques out there that he suddenly sucks at defense because the best player on earth played well against him in Game 5. It was always going to be really, really hard to win that game. But 45 points is just
wild.
What a confidence booster too for Minnesota. Like, what a boost that might carry through.
Yeah. It's a huge momentum swing. Although as you noted, the series has been so squirrely and so unpredictable, and there's been so many turns that we didn't anticipate. Nobody thought that the Wolves would open up the series by winning 2 on the defending champs' home floor. And then the Nuggets return the favor, and then Joker has the Joker game, and then all of a sudden there's a 45-point home win for the Wolves, who hadn't won at home yet in this series. Like,
what's going on?
It's just wild. What is going on? I don't know. I don't know what to anticipate here. I am curious. Do you think that whoever wins this is the favorite in the next round?
I love you. Like, you literally read my mind. I think I said that a week ago, and I just said a few minutes ago I don't like predictions. But yes, maybe I've said it on the radio show, but whoever wins the series, I think is making, if you have to predict, I would take to make the finals. And whoever loses is going to be, I don't know about forgotten or criticized. Denver will be criticized. Minnesota, maybe it'll be a nice little run. I just think it'll be easy to lose track of whoever loses Game 7 might be the second best team that remains in the Western Conference. I think both these teams are that good, and I think that's part of the reason there's a Game 7. look, Jamal Murray hasn't played well in some games, and there's a lot we have got into. Yes, I think they're both outstanding basketball teams, and I would take each of these teams over either the Mavs or the Thunder. It'd be a hard-fought series, but in the Western Conference Finals. Would you? Are you in the same?
Yeah, I think that they probably are, but I'm also pretty bullish on the other two teams as well, the Mavs and the Thunder. And I think like
with you, they're both good.
These last four teams in the Western Conference are all so good, and only one of them is going to get out of the conference. And then you're going to have three teams that are like, man, that could have been us. Like we had a really good team this year, and we just ran into, another team that's just absolutely brutally good. And any other year and any other iteration, that could have been us. And we've discussed this on the pod too. Moving forward, that's kind of what the Western Conference is going to be. Right. You're just going to have to make it through this ridiculous gauntlet. And then on the other side, you got the Celtics. Like, who knows? I'm hopeful that whoever gets out of that the Knicks Pacers series can give them a run, but it's not the same. They haven't had the same test put before them.
No, the Celtics have not been tested, and they may not be tested until the finals. But to your point, so I'm with you. If I were going to rank the remaining, what do we got? 7 basketball teams. Did I just do that right? That are left, that are still alive. Ash isn't here to get mad at me and defend the Knicks. I think the Knicks are really good, but based on where they are health-wise, the Knicks would be 5 for me, or would be 6 for me. It would be, Boston or Denver, and then it would be the remaining West teams, and then it would be the New York Knicks. I think every one of those Western Conference teams is the best team in the East outside of Boston if they were shoved over on that side of the bracket. For me,
I'm starting to lean just because I've become Boston playoff skeptical. That
good.
I'm starting
Welcome
to lean
aboard.
towards more of the teams ahead of them right now in the postseason. I mean, for sure, I'd have Denver. I'm like feeling Minnesota, and then you could there's a case to be made for the other two Western Conference teams. I'd probably still put Boston ahead of both OKC and the Mavs at this point, but
it's a conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation because we've seen them fail time and time, and this is obviously the best version of the Celtics that they've had in a long time. But we've seen them fail repeatedly, and they don't have Kristaps, and Jason Tatum isn't shooting the ball well,
horribly.
Yeah.
There's the other thing that we don't know because nobody's pushed them. Let's just presume that there's going to be at least one series for Boston, and maybe if somebody challenges them in the conference finals too, where there are multiple close games, where it's really exciting multiple times. Is Jaylen Brown are they drawing up plays for Jaylen Brown in the way they have it in the past to be the guy at the end of the game? Because he's been pretty good. I mean, it hasn't been under real duress. Or is Mazzulla just, nope, it's Tatum, he's the guy, even though he's been awful in this series? And I don't know the answer. It's one of these unanswered things that I'm really interested in that we may not even see until the finals. Who's taken the last shot or shots for Boston?
Jaylen Brown's been their best player this postseason.
Yes,
for sure. I'm going to guess, without knowing, obviously, that Mazzulla will just revert to form because we haven't seen any evidence of – we talked about it during the regular season that their offense, obviously, very good this season, number one. And yet in the fourth quarter, in the few times where they were tested in the clutch, they reverted to Jason Tatum iso ball. And the offense ground to a halt, and he decided to throw up some hero shots, and frequently it didn't work out. And I'm like, well, why don't you just run your regular offense? It's pretty good. Or absent that, if Tatum isn't performing for you, why not go with a hot hand? I'm skeptical that Mazzulla will make that adjustment. But we'll see, I guess, if it happens.
We keep talking about Tatum, and because we can document his struggles. You can really get into the numbers in the clutch this year, the last 3 years. Joe Mazzulla is really unproven as a head coach. And even though he didn't succeed last year, he got to a game 7 of the conference finals, but he was, I thought, underwhelming. Most people thought he was underwhelming. This year, he's expected to win the whole thing. That is the expect. And there's no telling how he responds when somebody pushes him as well. There's a lot of trapdoors for Boston.
A lot of questions for Boston. Back to this other series that we were discussing, the Nuggets and the Wolves. Game 7 on Sunday in Denver. Nuggets are favored by 5 points. They're favored as well, obviously, because there's only one game left to win this series. I don't know. Are we going to do a prediction? You said you didn't want to do one.
I mean, all right, so I'll say that. So here's part of it too. It's not the same thing, but it sort of reminds me. So I covered, you probably did too. I covered that 2016 Warriors Cavs series. No, 2015, whatever year they won 73 games. 2016. And I've been on the road for 3 months. I've been at almost every single Warriors game in the lead up to 73. I flew back for Kobe's last game. I just wanted to go home. By the time they got up 3-1, and I'll never forget the surety that every prognosticator, myself included, had the Warriors are going to win that thing. And then Draymond gets suspended, but they'll win the next one. Are they losing Cleveland? And if memory serves, the Warriors were big favorites going into Game 7. Everybody was like, what an amazing performance by LeBron and the Cavs to get to a 7, but they're not going to win 3 in a row against the Warriors. And you know what happened. It was a close game. So, no, I'm not making a prediction because anything can happen in the Game 7. Anything can happen.
I'm going to take the Nuggets just because they are the defending champs and it is at home. But honestly, nothing would surprise me. This has been an outrageously fun series, a completely unpredictable series. I'm so glad that we're getting Game 7. It's on Sunday. I cannot wait for it. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have probably now secured a win for the Wolves by taking the Nuggets, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Wolves won this game. All right,
who do you want to win? Sorry, real quick. Who do you, as your reporter, sort of basketball fan, podcaster? I want the Wolves to win too.
They're just a fun story, man. Like they're fun to watch, and also I want more Ant. I want more Ant too. Is incredible to watch, and if they advance, that'll be super fun as well. But just getting more Ant in a big moment when he's 22, about to be 23 this summer, and he is like fully like materializing and developing into an absolute superstar in front of our eyes, and like put the mic in front of his face, let him go out there and cook. Yeah, I want more Ant. So that would be great. But either way,
I'm mad at the Nuggets because had they just taken care of business the last game of the year, we would have this series in the conference finals. Think about it. If we were going to, it would have been amazing. They stole that
conference finals. I know they did. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to discuss our desperation rankings. Who is of the remaining teams the most desperate to win a title this season? That's coming up next on Beyond the Arc.
The best couch potatoes come from Pluto TV country.
And these taters, they like all sorts of different things.
Survivor Channel, Ink Master Channel.
If it's got a spaceship in it, I'm probably watching it.
3 channels dedicated to CSI.
Whatever mood you're in, it's going to be easy watching.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John and Bill on a Friday. Find us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Download, subscribe. Please leave us a review. It'd be very helpful. Desperation rankings. All right, so of the teams left, this comes from producer Aaron, who was discussing this with us last night in our group chat. And we're just going to walk through here of the remaining teams who needs this the most and for various reasons. So we could start wherever you want. You pick a team and we'll make the case for why they need to do it this year.
Do you want me to just, because I have a 1 to 7. Do you want me to go through it and you can just tell me where I'm right or wrong?
Yeah, let's do your rankings and I'll tell you where I am. Yeah, let's do it.
You want me to start at most desperate? Most desperate.
Start at 7, least desperate.
All right, the Pacers. They shouldn't even be here. She doesn't even go to this school. Way to go. Okay, I'm just gonna move on. I'm gonna cross.
Hold on. I want to interrogate the Pacers for this.
Got it.
Fair enough. I think that's probably the right spot for them. And I think it's most likely that Pascal resigns with them because otherwise, why would they have traded for him and why would he have agreed to, go there? They probably would have said, hinted, hey, I want not to be in Indiana. However, what's the chance that the Pacers are just back in contention next year? I mean, the East is not as good as the West, obviously, but it's hard to get this far.
Yeah, I think part of the reason the desperation isn't as high, I mean, everybody wants to win, but to your, I think, excellent spot on point, if Siakam had any qualms about staying, I think this has to solve them. I mean, at a minimum, a 6 game in the second round of the playoffs is a pretty nice run, and maybe they'll go further. And I think if you're Siakam, you can look at this and you can look at the way the defense played toward the end of the year, and you can say, you know what, this is something to build on. I'm in.
Pacers have never won a title, though. I mean, eventually, when you get close, you're like, hey, wouldn't a parade be fun? And
guys have never dunked at basketball. Sometimes you just accept things as they are. If you get close, that's nice.
You're right, though. They're least desperate. Go ahead.
All right, I think the next one's Oklahoma City, and I think this is pretty self-evident, just because their future, I think, is the brightest. If you had to bet on any of these teams with everything with your life on who's going to win a championship the next 5 years, the number of picks they have, the remarkable way in which Sam Presti has run this organization, who, by the way, to his credit, was at the combine, and then I talked to him, and then left and was at the game. Like a lot of GMs don't do that. They could win it this year. They're really good. They obviously got to win a couple games in their series to get to the next round. I just think, John, they have so many draft picks and they're so young. This is all gravy, even if the gravy's a pretty impressive thing too.
The window is so big. They have such a massive window. I want to just touch on Sam Presti for a second, because I said last week while you and Ash were out to Colin that he should be the GM of the year for like the next 100 years, because they're set up for so long. Like what he's built and what
it's true.
And like all the options that he has. Yeah, spit take would have been amazing there. But all the options that he has, it's really truly remarkable. This thing could be good for a very, very, very long time. The caveat here and the one knock against him is he made a mistake at the deadline. Like, quite clearly, the whole Josh Giddey component. Like, I know that they're like, we're just good right now. We're going to wait till the offseason. We'll figure it out and blah, blah, blah. Like, they could have made a move now and still had a zillion assets left over that would have really helped them, because as we've discussed at length on this show, having to start, well, you don't have to start Josh Giddey, but they keep doing it, and then they keep yanking him from the lineup. And as Aaron had mentioned, if you keep taking him out of the lineup, maybe he shouldn't be starting in the first place.
So I'll just say this. It's a really good point. I think that a lot of this is exploratory. They're trying to figure out what they had. I'm trying to look up right now what their standings were when that went down. Yeah, they were in second.
They were just top of the conference all season long. Them
now,
and
they were on an All-Star game. They were second or third. Now now if you're Presti, you've had a chance to evaluate Giddey in the postseason and this team. And so I hear what you're saying. I just think the window is so big. There maybe wasn't a reason to panic and rush and make moves at the deadline because you're worried you're not going to win a championship in 2024. I think as you said, they have a lot of runway. It's a good point.
That's a good spot for them.
Number 5, this gets a little tricky. I've got the Timberwolves here. Now, there's a big asterisk because we have competing owners on television. I don't know who's going to run the team, and I'm presuming that whoever wins what'll be, I think, a legal battle to be in charge of the Timberwolves at the top level, at the ownership level, will spend the money that is required, which will be significant, to keep this team together. Because I think you have to draw the conclusion that the core is good enough. Obviously, they are, and you and I have talked about how we think they can be good for a long time. Assuming that's true, assuming that they're not going to blow this thing up and be the Marlins of Major League Baseball, right? They want it, they need it.
Weird team.
Yeah, you never know with windows, but I think that there is runway here if whoever owns this team is willing to spend the money to get that runway. And so I don't think you're as desperate as some other teams.
They have to be willing to spend it. What a disservice it would be to the franchise and that fan base to take the Nuggets, whether you win or lose, taking the Nuggets, the defending champs, to Game 7 in a series that was incredibly hard fought. When you have, as we mentioned, we've given Anthony Edwards, rightly so, all the possible flowers. And you have now seen that their bigs that I was super skeptical and dubious about when they went and got Gobert, they work together. They don't just work together. They thrive together. Having those 3 guys in a rotation, and it would be if Glenn Taylor or the A-Rod consortium decide no thanks on the tax, then all of a sudden you've got to unplug probably Cat or move Jaden McDaniels or Nas or somebody plus somebody else probably, and what a disservice that would be.
And let me throw this in too. I mean, it's not a huge talking point, but the GM is more than a GM. The guy that runs basketball ops, Tim Connolly, who put this together and what came from Denver and constructed, as you pointed out, it's now a talking point everywhere, this team to beat Denver, to beat the Nuggets, the team that he built. We'll see. There's a world where he gets lured to Detroit for $15 million a year. Everybody is talking about it at the combine. Yeah. And so that also, if the architect leaves, that also sort of complicates everything because that guy's the mastermind.
He is the mastermind. I'm a huge, huge fan of his for all the obvious reasons. I wonder if that happened. For me, if I'm him, no thanks on Detroit, for a lot 100%. Of different reasons. But if he does leave, I wonder if his lieutenant Sachin Gupta, who I'm also a massive fan of, and who is one of the smartest human beings on the planet and used to work for Sam Hinkie back in the day, if he would then graduate to run the spot. Probably. Or if he'd go with what would that look like? Because he always kind of reminded me of a Paul DePodesta to for Billy Beane. Right?
Yeah.
Like, he's always been the second guy.
Yeah, but like as you know, being number one is not being number two. I thought the exact same thing you're saying about Farhan Zaidi when he was. This is deep cut baseball. When he was the number two under Friedman with the Dodgers, he goes to San Francisco, and it's like, I don't know, like and he's a really
tough to be the guy.
You're right. It's hard to be the guy. Also, who knows what ownership group Connolly wants to win out, because there's always interpersonal relationships, dynamics.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a weird.
Good point.
So Minnesota's hard to put because it's hard to see their future. I'm going to go Knicks fourth. I think they're in the middle ground. Like, A, they're the Knicks, so maybe they won't be here for 30 more years. B, even though everyone's pushing back against this, and Jared Greenberg made the best argument against my view of Tibbs that I've heard yet on the minutes, I still worry that all the minutes are going to pile up just over time. On the other hand, like it feels like the Knicks have shown they have something. Leon Rose, who runs basketball ops there, came from CAA, doesn't ever do media interviews. He's sort of a Stallinger-esque basketball guy, but he's done a great job. So I think the Knicks are kind of in the middle here.
I'd have the Knicks higher just because they haven't won since 1973, and they haven't even been to the Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. Like right now, they're having one of those seasons that is just like really magical. And as I keep saying, it's really hard to get this far. And if you don't, if you have an opportunity, the Sixers, not to bring it back to them, but just as an example, if Kawhi Leonard doesn't hit one of the most amazing shots ever, then who knows what happens for them in that season, right? Except for he does, and they never even come really close again, except for Ben Simmons passing up a dunk against the Hawks. Like those windows, you in the moment, you're like, they're set up for a while. Right. It's going to be great. And then it's the next season, you're like, oh no, it's so hard to do this.
You perfectly transitioned me to my next one and why I have Denver at 3 and not New York, because New York also plays in the Eastern Conference. Look, Denver's amazing, but to your point you just made, I'm just going to steal your point and insert it into this part of the conversation. And the fact the West is brutal, which we talked about earlier.
Oh yeah, great point.
Windows close. And I'm being 89% farcical, but 11% serious when I say I don't want Nikola Jokic to lose in this round and say, hell, it's horses all the time now. I mean, these things these things can be fragile, right? He loves his horses. So I know Denver's won. I know that if you had to pick a single team to win this year, this is probably the team I would probably take, right? If I had to pick one, even though they got to beat Minnesota in that game 7. I just think that there is a lot riding on this, because forget last year. If they want to be a dynasty or they want to be a dominant force, I think it's a significant run right now, potentially.
Yeah. And it's legacy defining, right? Like if you win another one, now all of a sudden, you win one and everybody's like, you're really good. That's amazing. Nice job. You win 2 and you win back to back. And now all of a sudden we're talking about what this team is one of the great teams of all time. And, that's something I'm sure the Joker would like to do, right? I mean, you add that onto your, he's won the 3 MVPs in the last 4 years, and then he could go, on top of that, look what I just did. This would be what? We've had 5 straight non-repeat champions, right? So this would be 6 if the Nuggets don't get it. So,
and to your point about 2 is so much more significant than 1. The difference is being LeBron's Heat, sort of. I know they made 4 in a row, but they only won 2. Or Kobe's Powell, Shaq-less teams versus that Pistons team that won, what was it, 20 years ago? A good team. And Detroit made back-to-back finals, if I remember right, but they only won 1. And you kind of forget. It kind of goes away. Doc Rivers' Boston team.
By the way, I like the fact that we haven't had a repeat champion in a while, because I covered that entire Warriors run. And I know that producer Aaron, who's a big time Warriors fan, will not agree with me here, but when the Raptors beat them on their floor, I was like, thank God, this thing has to stop. I cannot do it. It was beautiful to watch.
Disagree.
At the very beginning, especially, I was like, this is amazing. Steph is a revelation. I can't get enough of this. And by the end, I'm like, what are we doing? I love San Francisco as a city, but the team, I've had enough. I need enough of this team. I need a different team.
I mean, all I wanted was the Warriors to keep winning so I could keep going to the same underground sushi place that serves sushi till 2 a.m. after every game. I mean, 3 blocks from the hotel Adagio.
One of my favorite Indian restaurants in the world is there, but At some
Who's
point,
so
I
good.
need a little variety in my basketball diet.
get it.
All right, who's on your
I
list?
also love Steph. I
Yeah, me
think
too.
Boston's too. And Boston could be one. And I'll explain why Dallas is one in a sec. But like, I just think, well, the desperation is self-evident. Missoula, the fact that Tatum is not, all the things we've talked about, they are the best team on paper in the NBA. They are one of the best teams in the numbers in the history of the NBA. They have they were in the finals 2 years ago. They were in a conference finals last year, and they got down 3-0 and then won 3 in a row and then lost on their home court. They might have been in a conference finals, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. They've had these runs with these guys. You got to win. You got to win.
This is their third consecutive and fourth in 5 years. And conference finals. I mean, they do need to win. This would be number one for me. This would be number one for me because, they haven't won since 2008. There have been a lot of questions this season about Jason Tatum. He was pouting afterwards and saying, we're not actually a super team. We don't have the coach of the year and the MVP,
right.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Right. Well, at first I was like, okay, he's being ridiculous. They were the best team in the NBA this season, except for when they played the Nuggets. And now I'm thinking about it, like watching them sort of sleepwalk through the playoffs. And I'm like, they were really good in a really bad conference this year. And I want to see what happens when they face a really tested Western Conference champion. And if you win, okay, all questions are answered. But if not, Joe Mazzulla, he's going to have a lot of heat on him. Jason Tatum is going to have a lot of heat on him. Brad Stevens has done an awesome job assembling that team. But then what's your answer now, Brad? Because you didn't win again. So that would be number one.
It's a great call. And it's close for me. I have Dallas one in part because I do think there's a lot that rides on Luka's just sort of how we view him. And I've said this a lot, but I think there's a transition into Harden Houston territory. Especially if he goes out in the second round, whatever. And it looks like they won't, but whatever the reasons. There's also the Kyrie Luka thing that felt like it worked. And I always just worry about Kyrie's continuity or happiness if things don't go particularly well. And I just feels like you brought up magical season for the Knicks. It feels like everything is kind of primed right now for Dallas. The defense has been great. The moves they made at the deadline were outstanding. Denver is a little vulnerable because of Jamal Murray and or they get to play Minnesota, who I think is the better team, but still not. You would have taken that matchup when the playoffs started, I think, if you were Dallas in a heartbeat. And we've talked about Boston maybe being this amazing team that is still beatable. So for me, I think there's massive amounts of pressure on Dallas to get it done because I have the least confidence of every team 1 to 6 outside of the Pacers that Dallas will get to a conference finals again. If I had to rank who's getting to conference finals or finals out of these 6 teams in the next 3 or 4 years.
I'm going to be honest with you. When I was putting together my rankings, I forgot about the Mavericks because I don't think they're under much pressure at all. I was like,
you don't think they're under pressure?
No. I look at this. I would have Boston number 1 and the Knicks number 2.
Interesting.
You're right though about I wouldn't have much confidence in the Mavs repeating this either, which is kind of why I think that there's not much pressure on them because I don't think that they thought that this was going to happen. They go on that incredible 16-2 run after grabbing PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. That team was fighting to get out of the play-in, and then they make the moves at the deadline, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, look at this. We're
True.
Good now. And so I think that they're just kind of figuring it out and enjoying the run. And they're a really good team. They have a great chance to knock off the number 1 seed. If they don't, though, I don't think it would be a huge disappointment.
So all right, let me ask you this. So because Joel Embiid comes to mind of an answer of one of the question I want to ask you. If Luka, not that if he doesn't win this year, he's never going to win, right? There's lots of time and people flip scripts and Joker last year. Hell, Elway in football at the end of his career was a big loser and it wasn't a loser. And then he won 2 in his last 2 years. The story is old as time. But if Luka doesn't win this year and there starts to be worries that he's not going to win, who is the best player who's better than Luka that hasn't won a championship? I mean, Joel's on that list, but I think you start to get into this hey man, you got to win, bro. You're Luka Doncic.
Yeah. I mean, you'd throw Tatum in there for sure. Embiid is on that list.
Yeah. I don't think Tatum's in the same level for me as those two.
No, but I'm just saying on the list of who hasn't won that's really good.
Harden, but he's washed in that way.
Harden's washed. I mean, obviously CP's never won one. That's an all-time never won one. That's like a Charles Barkley, Malone, Stockton type of never won one.
Right. So you're entering that stratosphere, and you don't have the excuse that I think Embiid had this year that he was hurt. He came back from injury. He played through pain, and Luka's been Luka was great in the last game, but he has not been Anthony Edwards or Nikola Jokic enough. Just that's a high standard, but he hasn't been.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what happens with their next game. We're going to actually preview that game. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to preview tonight's Knicks-Pacers game, and we'll also take a look at Saturday's Thunder Mavs series. That's coming up on Beyond the Arc.
Two big boys getting ready to play. Big being the operative word here. And here they come.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John and Bill closing it out on a Friday. Check out our YouTube page at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. You find all kinds of fun stuff. One of Bill's videos did very well where he was talking about Bronny. We also had Jay Wright on to talk about the Nova Knicks. We got all kinds of fun stuff on the page.
Can I call out Haley from CBS Sports HQ, who I think is amazing? I went on HQ, I don't know. Yeah, I came back from Chicago maybe yesterday or the day before, and I go on. She goes, "Hey, do you want to defend what you said about Bronny?" Like that was so apparently that when I called him tiny, apparently that went viral and made a lot of people very angry people.
Well, just the use of the word tiny. I mean, he is kind of short, like small by basketball standards. I mean, he's taller than you and I, but I'm only 5'10", so that's not a high bar to clear, literally.
You look tall when I met you because you know what? I'm not 5'10", but I lied back in the day and said I was, but I'm not. 5'9" and 9/10. I've got a column that's out that I think I'm just going to plug it myself. That is on Bronny. It's 3,000 words, which is a lot, and I think it's you. So you like me or a writer. Sometimes you write stuff and you know it's garbage or it's not very good, but this is actually pretty good, and I think pretty nuanced and well reported enough that for people that are out there, and it also did pretty well, and it explains, I think, puts in the proper context his tiny size and his impressive stature as a person in person. Like I was blown away by the guy, not the player. So it'll be interesting how it works, but it is worth checking out at cbssports.com, even though I wrote it. It's pretty good.
Check Bill's column out on Tiny Bronny and get mad all over again. All right. Tonight's Knicks
get mad again.
We got two games to preview. Talking about, I don't know anymore. Knicks and Pacers. The Knicks are up 3-2. Pacers are actually favored by 5.5 in this one. Bill, yeah, you got the Pacers.
5.5. Yeah, and I didn't know the 5.5, but that makes me. Yeah, yes. I think that they are going to potentially run them out of the gym. We've seen the home team play really, really well. I think they're actually like pretty evenly matched teams, given the way in which the Knicks are just absolutely felled by injury. And Brunson's been great, but obviously, like he's not 100%. No, OG is such a huge miss. I think it's going back to the Garden.
The Pacers have played really well at home and really not away from home. They're 5-0 at home this postseason. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's probably Pacers tonight. Also, I would like to see a game 7, but yeah, if the Pacers don't pull this off, then there'll be some questions about how they stumbled in various games here. But this just if it goes to game 7 at MSG, right? This goes back to my desperation rankings. It's been so long since the Knicks did anything, right? They haven't made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, as I mentioned, since 2000. Championship droughts, they have the 3rd longest active drought in the NBA. The Wizards, who were previously the Bullets, haven't won it since 1979. The Hornets have never won it. And then you've got the Knicks. So, and plus you get Celtics Knicks, and they faced each other 15 times in the playoffs, which only the Celtics and the Sixers have faced each other more in the playoffs. Like just reigniting that rival. I mean, like, my God, Boston fans against New York fans, we're all going to have to go hide and call out the National Guard, but it would be an entertaining series.
Look, I want the Knicks because I want to go cover the finals of the Garden. There's a theme that's
sure.
I just root for my self-interest. I mean, that's as an NBA guy. It would be interesting for the podcast too, because if the Knicks win, it's great content and Ash gets to gloat and be happy about it, which is great. But also if the Knicks lose, watching your friends be miserable in sports is a time-honored tradition, right? Sure. And have to just sit here and talk about it would also be great. So there's a lot riding for the podcast too, because your team's out. I don't have a team. It's they're riding a little for 1/3 of Beyond the Arc too.
That would be interesting. Before we move on, what kind of Halliburton do you think we're getting tonight? Because he was horrendous in game 1.
Yeah.
Then he was pretty good to really good between games 2 to 4. And then he absolutely no-showed in game 5.
Yeah, no-showed after game 1, he said, I got to be better and more aggressive. Called himself out, responded, and then forgot his own message to himself. I think we'll see a better version because I think the Pacers are going to win, but it is a really interesting question. And I don't know, because when guys check out, I mean, I'm old enough to cover LeBron when he utterly and totally checked out of that series against the Dallas Mavericks way back with the Heat. And lest you think I'm just being whatever hot takey, I bumped into Jay Adonde at the Combine, and randomly he brought it up because I had been someone who'd been pretty critical of LeBron, and because he's a basketball geek, he recently for fun went through all the tape of LeBron as a kid and then rewatched that finals to try to understand the psychology. And he's like, yeah, he just couldn't handle it yet. So those are, if LeBron can break under the pressure, now he obviously figured it out. Tyrese Halliburton can. So I don't know. They could go either way.
Also, things that need to be figured out. I want to see how Rick Carlisle adjusts to those Deuce McBride ball screens for Brunson that absolutely unlocked Brunson, and whether or not they have, like, if you're going to keep switching Nembhard and Halliburton onto Brunson, that's advantage Knicks. They got to figure out a solve there. I'm just looking forward
Didn't
to
you see Carlisle's answer? It was, shut the bleep up. It's bleep and effort. That's the answer, apparently.
I mean, okay, those guys are bad defenders though, and Brunson is really good. You got to figure out something more than try harder against him. He's good.
Yeah, yelling at the media and telling your guys to try harder may not unlock the keys to a conference finals appearance.
Brunson is a mismatch advantage on those guys. I don't know. All right, last one, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. We got Thunder and Mavericks Saturday in Dallas. Mavs have a 3-2 series lead. They're favored by 4 in that one, Bill. Another one where I don't like, every time I'm like, oh, the Thunder, here they go. This is the Thunder that we saw during the regular season. SGA has not had a lot of help from anybody else. I mean, his supporting cast has been really good this season, but defensively, I still think they're trying. But they've been good. They just offensively, they don't really have a solve here right now. They're not shooting the ball well. They're not scoring the ball well.
And it's not as if they're missing all contested shots. I mean, Dallas's defense is really good, but those young Thunder players have missed a lot of open shots and a lot of open threes the last few games. It's crazy. They're young, man. They're young.
I was going to say that, when you hold the Mavs to 104 points at home, you're like, pretty good. I feel good about this. And then
you win 85% of those games.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, we only scored 92 on our own floor. That's like really inexcusable.
But the shots are there and they're running their offense. They're not being stifled the way that we've seen some teams stifle some other teams over the course of the playoffs, right? Where some defenses have stepped up and just suffocated. That's not what's happened. The Dallas has played good defense, but the Thunder, the guys that aren't SGA, and it's not just Giddey, have not shot well, often with open looks and sometimes at home. So it's a hard, I don't know, man. It's a hard game this feels like a 7-game series because it's been a pretty interesting, evenly matched series, and home court advantage hasn't necessarily been a lock in this series, but because elimination games are hard, but you got to get some help offensively for SGA. To your point, you're already playing good defense. You got to be scoring 110, 115 points.
It's such a missed opportunity from the Thunder too, because how much longer can you count on Kyrie not being Kyrie? Just 12 points on 11 shots in the last one. Luka finally materialized, but they've been playing with, on the one hand, I go, they've been playing really well. The Thunder have defensively against Luka and Kyrie for much of this series. Luka, again, got unlocked in the last game, but Kyrie has really been scuffling. But at some point, you're just kind of bracing for the Kyrie breakout game. And if you get the Kyrie breakout game in this one, you might as well make your vacation plans. You're going home.
Yeah, it's like what is more likely? Is it that Kyrie and Luka both are exceptional together, which we haven't really seen a lot of, or is it the Thunder players return to what was a top 3 offense, and they just? I don't know which one I think is more likely, because I have doubts on both sides of that coin. Because if Kyrie has a breakout game, there's still a world where Luka has not been consistently awesome and particularly efficient, and so there's all these guys and all these sort of factors that were really consistently outstanding in different ways for both teams that have become unreliable in this series. It's been weird. It's been hard to gauge.
Super hard to gauge, and yet I will ask you to gauge it. Who do you got?
All right, this one I will answer. I'll go Dallas. I'm a little reluctant here, But I think you're right. I think the best point is the point you made, that there is a Kyrie explosion game coming, and maybe Kyrie locking in because he has won a championship early, not waiting to the second half to try to get going. And I do think Oklahoma City's youth has been a thing, and this is going to – I don't think you're going to get the response you got from the Timberwolves. It's obviously not at home for them. So give me Dallas. Give me Dallas by,
I've been
by 8.
horrible prognosticating anything for quite a while now. I will also take Dallas, but I want the Thunder because I want as many game 7s as possible. They're super fun, and I would like to see the Thunder, how they acquit themselves in that kind of atmosphere. I think it would be quite entertaining and enjoyable for all of us, although probably like very taxing and stressful for the two fan bases. But as a neutral here,
not your problem. Not your problem.
Right, not our problem. I would like the Thunder to win this one. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back on Monday with Ashley. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy all the basketball tonight and this weekend, and have a great weekend.